again because she speaks in the thing at the beginning. Anyways, hi everybody. My name's David Spark. I'm the producer of the CISO Series Video Chat. Welcome. Thank you. This is our second to last CISO Series Video Chat of 2020. Let's go through all the mechanics of what you need to know. Today's topic is hacking SaaS security. An hour of critical thinking on cloud application policy, monitoring, detection, and response. Our guests are Elena Kovachko, Chief Trust Officer of SAP, and Ben Johnson, co-founder and CTO for Obsidian. That's our sponsor today, Obsidian. Thank you so much. You're going to hear a lot about them, but we're going to talk mostly about SaaS security. So if you've got questions about SaaS security, around policy, around opportunities, around detection and response, this is the video chat to discuss it in. Let's also mention that there are 5 different ways you can participate. You can participate in the chat room. Most of you have figured that out. You could submit bad ideas. Those of you who are regulars know all about that. We want your best bad ideas on the topic of SaaS security. And also, at 20 minutes past the hour, the producer, Andrew, will throw up the poll, and you'll vote for your favorites. Then anybody can join us on video. Just type "bring me on" all in caps, and Andrew will try to get as many of you on video as possible to ask a question, make a comment, whatever you'd like. Ask a question. If you don't want to do it on video, you can do it with the Ask a Question button that is at the bottom of the screen. And also, since we often will get a lot of questions, vote for your favorite question so we know to ask that question first. So here is today's schedule. First 20 minutes, questions, submit your bad ideas. 20 minutes past the hour, the poll goes live. Vote for your favorite bad idea. At 30 minutes past the hour, we will play the Department of Yes. That is the flip side of the Department of No, where security is known to say no to good ideas. Our guests will say yes to very bad ideas. Then we'll play What's Worse. The winner of last week's, Kevin Hackinson, who was the winner of last week's Best Bad Idea, will give us our 2 options for the What's Worse. It's a risk management exercise to determine which one is the worst of the 2 bad ideas. And then you will vote for your favorite questions again, final advice, and then we will all roll over to our icebreaker. Also, register for the last video chat of 2020, Hacking the Crown Jewels. There is a link at the bottom of the screen right there. That is next Friday, our very last one of 2020. Please register for that. If you click that button, it will not take you out of this video chat at all. And let me just remind you, I'll remind you that later, that Obsidian was our sponsor. And stick around for the icebreaker. All right. Now, let me get out of this. How do I get out of this? What am I doing here? Oh, I see the mistake I made. I see 2 cursors in 2 different locations. All right, let's get to the actual chat. Enough of the mechanics right now. I'm going to start with you, Elena, and here's my question. What don't we know about SaaS environments that are actually a huge opportunity for us?
Excellent. That's a great question, David. Already SaaS is transforming so many different industries. It's transforming the industries, but also industries have a chance to learn from each other, adapt, and make sure that they adopt each other's best practices. We already know that SaaS accounts for 25% of all of the global software and is only set to grow. 30% of small businesses and medium businesses already run their operations entirely out of the public cloud. And 90% of CIOs are considering SaaS applications for some of their critical workflows. So, we see that it's a major opportunity for all of us to tap into. It's an area also that requires a lot of collaboration. So we all can choose an area that we are passionate about and where we can really make an impact.
So I don't think anyone's ignoring SaaS. I think we're all kind of on board with that. Let me ask, Ben, your customers who come to you, I'm assuming they're seeing plenty of opportunities, but where are they? What are their concerns when they talk to you? Like, I'm interested to know that sort of that first stage of, I'm not dealing with I'm not solving the problem here. Maybe I don't even know what my problem is. What's the situation?
Yeah, and thanks for having us on, David, and Elena, great to see you again. Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's that the security team has often been left out of the SaaS experience, right? I mean, SaaS comes in through the side door basically, and IT might not even be involved. So a lot of times what we see is the CISO or someone in security says, hey, the journey is going to end in SaaS. Like all roads just lead to SaaS, kind of like Elena just said. But we need to figure out how to do security, right? We're not just monitoring network packets. We're thinking about endpoints. We need to think about SaaS, and happy to talk a lot more about that. But I think first and foremost, it's how do I kind of wrap my hands around it and essentially have a strategy for attacking SaaS.
So this gets to an issue of trust, and there are many levels of trust here. And I'll start with you, Elena, in that there's trust within your own organization, like what you said. Why is this stuff coming on the side door? There's trust with your SaaS provider, like how are they handling data? Do I have control over it? Can I dictate what they do and don't do with the data? So where are we with trust today, and what are the questions that can be asked?
Exactly. Thanks, David. That's a great question. This is exactly our job, right? And today we see that many SaaS providers are becoming very transparent about their security capabilities, controls, and the strategies. Many of us carry industry certifications, including ISO 27000 and a number of others that customers can actually request and review. The SaaS providers are regularly audited, and also that information becomes available to customers. And of course, when you work with a SaaS provider, they give you different capabilities to protect your data depending on what your needs are, depending on what is it that you're looking for. So you can actually work through that very thoughtful process and the strategy specifically tailored to recognize needs of the customer, needs of the industry that you're operating in, and therefore you can actually establish that kind of strategy and policy and all of the levels of the controls that are very much needed for your specific environment or expectations or where you're taking your business.
Mm-hmm. So let me throw the same question to you, Ben. And maybe give me a good example of how have you seen a customer resolve the trust issue within their four walls?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to go about that, and you usually do need a multi-pronged approach. First and foremost, from the procurement side, what we've seen is get finance on your side. Like tell finance you cannot pay for new SaaS if security is not in the loop. That actually works.
That's a good angle.
Yeah, that actually works quite well. When you're bringing on SaaS providers, what are they doing with your data? Are they putting it in other countries? Are they, routing it through different data centers? We've seen a lot of surprises that data actually can flow through different countries, and you thought everything stays maybe in the US or what have you. And then really just getting SaaS in the mix in your operational security. So does your SOC monitor even something as maybe it's not simple, but as simple as Office 365, which is core to your business, like is your security team, is your SOC monitoring that, or at least keeping an eye on it? So I think there's multi-pronged approach here, but it really just first and foremost has to be a first-class citizen.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, I got some questions that have come in right now, and something says Verisim Arc Cities. I don't know what that is, but he asks, how much SaaS security is too much SaaS security? And let me more ask, have you ever actually seen too much SaaS security? I don't know if that exists. Ben?
I don't think it exists, although I will admit every security person is trying to get more time, right? Trying to find time,
right,
exactly. because there's not enough supply there. I think one thing that's a bit frustrating at times is trying to decipher subscription levels and things like that, and what kind of security comes with which kind of subscription level. And then from a day-to-day operational security perspective, it has to be part of your day-to-day security. So I would say there is no such thing really as too much SaaS security, because we live on SaaS, we roll out of bed, our humans are main concerns, and our humans use SaaS all day. So SaaS has to be a priority.
But I'm going to play the common thing that I hear, and I'm going to throw this to you, Elena. When you put too many security controls on something, you can actually limit the business from actually operating, which is a common problem. So there is that. I think that's where this question is going. At what point can we, in the SaaS environment, limit the business from operating?
I think, David, to add to Ben's point, what SaaS providers are trying to do is to deliver a lot of customized modules or solutions where customers can actually select what's more suitable to their environment. So sometimes, it might actually feel if, say, security engineers or product engineers receive guidance that has a lot of, configurable modules, and they can, and a lot of options how to deploy an application. But from our perspective, that's actually a good thing, and it's worth it to put in extra effort to make sure that you have your configurations right, the capabilities, and you actually utilize them. So I haven't seen a case where it's too much security, but if our listeners have good examples to share, we'll definitely be happy to hear how they navigated it.
Yes, please throw them and by the way, please join us. We got a good question from Brent Williams, who I know is the CISO over at SurveyMonkey. He asked this question, and this one I kind of assume this, and this seems right up your alley, Ben. How do you enforce strong security standards across disparate SaaS applications? Example, prohibit downloading, things like that. So, you want to manage things across a lot of different, have one policy that rules them all. Is there a way to deal with that?
Today, I don't think, today I don't think you can do that across everything. I mean, probably everyone on the call has 50, 100, hundreds of SaaS applications. If you pick a key few or some strategic or core SaaS apps, then it's a bit more possible, but it still involves security. It involves maybe the application owner, maybe IT, maybe these are all different teams. So you're going to have to do some lobbying, some championing, is that a word? But you have to get some champions in the different parts of the business. And so first and foremost, you have to start with like, what is the policy, right? Is the policy no apps that automatically sync files? Is it everything has to have MFA? Is it just SSO? I mean, just SSO sounds simple, but we all know that's not necessarily simple in the real world. So yeah, I think it's possible to move in that direction, but it's not possible to do it against all of your SaaS apps right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also goes back to the point, David, and that you asked Ben earlier, that you have to look holistically, and you have to have a strategy, a policy, and including configuration of your application should be aligned to that policy. So, you shouldn't look at it in isolation or in silo as kind of like one problem, how do I solve for this particular instance, but how does it fit into the overall security strategy and deployment model that I'm utilizing in my company?
I want to also mention, I did not mention this earlier, and my apologies, Elena. Elena's opinions about everything have nothing specific to do with SAP. They're her own personal opinions. So don't start buying and selling SAP stock based on what she says right now. Okay? All right. I just want to get that out because I was remiss in saying it at the beginning. Can we get to actually some specific examples here of what you two have done in terms of like a before and after security situation with a SaaS? Like maybe like what's a common security problem that you see with a SaaS provider that they're not providing customers that they need to come up to speed on it? I'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I think you can look at it from a few different angles, and hopefully I'm not stealing everything Elena's about to say, so I'll try not to say too much. But first and foremost, you're worried about maybe the outsiders in, right? The external attackers. And so typically people have a good sense of using MFA and SSO and, good password policies or whatever. Hopefully that's all, again, through the SSO provider. But then it shifts inside, right? And it's all about your employees. Now, there are malicious insiders, but a lot of the times it's mistakes. So are people oversharing or that kind of thing? And I think something like third-party apps tends to be overlooked because everyone can pretty much add something to Slack or Salesforce or Office 365 or G Suite or whatever. And that doesn't tend to be, again, sort of like a first-class citizen where people don't realize that's extending your surface area. So I think something like OAuth apps, third-party apps, tends to be something that people don't think about.
Yeah.
Elena, you were to add?
I would add to that, Ben. So both software development of SaaS applications and also software consumption of SaaS applications. Both have changed. So we see the changes on both ends, right? So on the provider side, we definitely, like I said, all the providers there are trying to be very transparent about their capabilities. So hopefully, the goal is to really minimize risk management, to really make the decision process very easy, and to kind of guide the customers throughout that journey. And also on the consumption side, I think customers, like we discussed, they do want to follow the product security guides. They do want to make sure that they're implemented correctly, and they have to go through all of the steps on their side to understand what risks specifically are they exposed to, how those risks are mitigated through potential access controls, or like we discussed, they want to know, for instance, where specifically their data resides, if they have particular configuration or location requirements. So all of those capabilities should be discussed in advance. So hopefully by the time you are, at that implementation stage, you're sort of very clear where you are on both ends.
Got a question here from Chad Beckman. He's the CEO over at TrustMap, and I think I'm going to throw this one to you, Ben, and it's I think it's more specific to the SaaS developers, the developers of SaaS solutions. So it's coming from a different angle on our topic here. And he asks, how do SaaS solutions effectively implement secure DevOps into their code management lifecycle? My question is, do they do it any differently than anybody else? I mean, I guess, well, what's your answer to that, Ben?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. Yeah, and I'm fortunate that I'm exposed to our own SDLC and our own, we build a SaaS app. So we provide SaaS security and we defend ourselves, but we also build SaaS. So I guess I sort of have interesting perspective. Yeah, I mean, it's all about like, what's the layer? Is the layer just the UI or their APIs? You have to kind of think about like, what are the attack vectors or how would someone get in? But then behind that, it's all about people, right? Like, are the engineers involved in security discussions? Are you doing automated code scans, dynamic and static, and all of that stuff that I think's becoming standard, maybe not standard everywhere, but like everyone kind of knows now they should do it. It's necessary, right? And really everything you do now goes to production 5 times a day. So you have to really get that process good and automated testing and that kind of thing. So I think in general, to the way you phrased it, David, it's probably not that different than most other software, but usually it's going out the door faster and it's immediately globally accessible, which certainly changes the risk.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, David. I think that where the industry is going is to really make it easier for the developer community and developers to write the code and follow the industry best practices. So like Ben mentioned, a lot of the automation efforts are in place, but also they are being provided with libraries or frameworks or compiler settings that make it much easier for developers. And also this is how you build in security from the start. And I think this is where we're definitely focusing on in the industry as well.
Our poll is going to go up in just 2 minutes. So if you've got any more bad ideas, get them in.
Send them in. We need your bad ideas.
All right. Yes, we want your bad ideas as quickly as we can get them. All right. So let me, here's a question. I haven't not even read it, but it's already got voted up here. This is from Soyesh. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name, Soyesh, Suyesh, correctly. Just chat in the chat room if I am. What are your thoughts on implementing a CASB to address gaps in security across SaaS, PaaS, IaaS environments? I believe you feel CASBs actually have gaps in them. I want to hear your thoughts. He goes on and asks, in your opinion, how effective can those solutions be in providing visibility and extending the reach/enforcement of your security policies? I think this is right up your alley. Yes, Ben?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Good question. Excuse me. I think first and foremost, and it kind of goes to the earlier question around how much is too much security, but you have to kind of pick, are you going with control or are you going with visibility, right? You have to optimize for one. We all need both, but you have to optimize.
You can't have both?
Maybe, but you have to optimize for one or the other, right? You have to be more preventative, or you have to be more detection and response, or pick your terminology. And I do think IaaS and SaaS are quite different in what typically is the concern, what you're trying to defend, There's all sorts of stuff now in Amazon or other IaaS.
You froze there for a second. Hold on. Are you coming back?
Am I back?
Yeah, but just the last 5 seconds, whatever you said, just repeat what you said.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so IaaS and SaaS are different, and like Amazon has hundreds of different services now they offer and that kind of thing. So I think you really have to pick what you're going after, again, starting with control or visibility, and then are you going after SaaS or IaaS? And then on the SaaS side, we tend to look at the APIs and really focus there and get the data and focus more from a visibility perspective. I think the other thing too is are you focused on more of like the IT team or the security ops team, right? So I guess what I'm saying is you have to focus your efforts, and then you have to measure up the different tooling that's available to you and how you're going to approach it.
Cool. All right. Just to let everyone know that Andrew is going to be dropping the poll in just a second. So once that poll goes up, please vote for your favorite bad ideas. And our winner from last week will be picking also his favorite bad ideas to be part of. That's Kevin Hackinson will be part of the What's Worst challenge as well. Oh, poll is up live. All right. Let me remind everybody again, they can click the button on the bottom to register for next week's video chat, which is also going to be a really good discussion on hacking the crown jewels. So with just the 10 minutes left we got before we jump into our games, let me ask this question. This also seems a little bit more up your alley, Ben. How are you being proactive in preventing cloud misconfigurations, being that we are hearing, unfortunately, time and time again, when there is a cloud breach, it's because of misconfiguration. So what can we do? Because it just seems like all this human error, that it's like one mistake after another, and that, like, how can you catch all of this? So where can we be proactive on that?
Yeah, how much time do we have? It starts with humans. So you got to talk to the technical team, whether that's the IT team, the engineers, the application owners that own the applications, and the users, right? Like both sets need education. And then secondly, you do need to do some assessments, right? So there's the way I like to think about it is there's explicit constraints and learned constraints, right? And so you can just have flat out like a policy that says 0 or 1, yes or no, that kind of thing. Right. Or you can try to assess how you've been using the tools and then build some controls around that and say, okay, as long as we stay in this bubble, we're good. Let's lock down everything outside the bubble so that we know what our surface area is. And then maybe over time, you sort of shrink the risk area. So I think first and foremost, people. Secondly, you go look at the applications you're using or the different technology you're using, and then see how that maps to your productivity needs.
And Elena, what can be done in policy in this respect? Oh, your audio went out. Elena, we don't have you. We can't hear you. Did you mute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to add to Ben's point, David. So in addition to obviously what he just mentioned, what would help to prevent misconfiguration is, first of all, to look and implement a fully harmonized program that actually looks after your security, confidentiality, availability, privacy across all of your applications. The role-based access control obviously is a big a best practice that we also recommend for customers. If you're using microservices that are that can provide you a consistent model to integrate all of the applications, provide additional services in a way that will actually be harmonized and will be easy for you to configure across your suite, that will definitely be helpful to orchestrate all of the additional services that you might have. And then, of course, all of the additional policies that you have can be orchestrated in a way that's consistent with the needs in the applications and the security and the criticality of those applications. So I think if you look at it holistically, and if you map the controls to the criticality, I think that would definitely be a good policy step to look at your business.
By the way, not to divert the discussion too much, but now there's a discussion of hamsters as a service, HaaS, which I believe there's going to be some hamsters running on wheels that we can all access a little bit of their power. I guess it's kind of like, sort of sharing the grid, energy grid. I would assume that's what HaaS is. All All right, let's go back to our questions that are actually relevant. This is this one back for with SaaS. We're trusting everyone each provider trusts and everyone they trust. So this gets into, not just third party vendors, but fourth party vendors. The vendors of the vendors, kind of a thing. How can we? So Phil Wolf asked this: with SaaS, we're trusting everyone each provider trusts and everyone they trust. So how can we extend our trust beyond the first degree, Elena?
That's the big question, right? So how can we do that? And I think in a lot of ways, the industry is trying to address that through obviously the agreements that SaaS providers have between each other, through also expectations that the customers put on the SaaS providers. And obviously, like I mentioned before, providing that transparency to the customer so they can also make their own decision if this is something that's going to work for them. But this is definitely one of the big problems that the industry is here to solve. And there's a lot of innovation happening in this space as well.
I mean, what is there literally one standard we can all agree on that flows through vendor to vendor to vendor? Does there exist one, Ben?
No.
Nothing. So there's literally nothing.
Yeah, it's I think in some ways there's been some standardization, but largely there's not.
I'm seriously, I'm bringing this down to try to the lowest level. Like standard, we're all connecting through the internet, like that. Let's move up. Like, are files parsed the same way, or no? Or there's not even anything even at the lowest level, is there?
No. I mean, everyone's doing things differently. There's some standardization around things like single sign-on, right? Like there's been a little bit of progress there so that everyone can use SAML or what have you. But largely, I think there's like the compliance standards like SOC 2 or ISO or, some of the others that when you go to a SaaS provider, you ask them, do they have this? You do some questionnaires. Maybe
Sure.
If they're really large, then they just say buy it or get lost kind of thing, right? But when it comes down to the technical aspect, it's all different. And that's part of the challenge with SaaS is everyone has different like privilege models. Everyone's logging their data differently, right? And it's hard, right? And to some of the earlier questions, like I do think you have to get some help, whether it's partners or tooling or what have you. You can't go become experts in all these different tools because they're so different.
What you're nodding your head, Elena? Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, frequently you also hear of one form of a similar question asked in multiple ways. And then, also it's kind of hard because
Can you give me an example of that? Like a question asked, the same question asked in different ways?
For instance, provide us examples or data on XYZ over different periods of time, so that means that the teams, for instance, have to collect different data, or it would have to be an extra effort versus, say, a standardized way to assess, a SaaS provider or to work with them. Like it could be a different time frame, it could be a different location of the control, it could be, just kind of like a varying degree of control depth that the customers want to go into. So it's, everybody wants to kind of achieve the same goal and have that confidence and trust. But because, like you mentioned, there's no standard, it's definitely, we try to do our best to reply and respond to all of the questions.
Do you ever create dummy accounts with your third-party providers to see what they're doing for privacy purposes on these accounts? Like, have you ever done this, Elena or Ben? Or Ben seen it with customers? Either of you?
I'll let Elena go first, I guess.
I think from the test environment perspective, you can implement those types of controls to see how they could work. I haven't done it. You mean us personally? Have we created?
Well, you ask your third party vendor as a SaaS thing. What are you doing with these accounts? How are these being handled? And then you just create a few dummy accounts and just say, hey, let's just track these accounts and see what data does or does not get leaked. Like, are they handling it the way they say they are? And again, to what level you track that, I don't know. Have you done it? Can you do it? Do you suggest it? Any of the above?
Right. I think from the personal perspective, yes, absolutely. You know, you kind of create random email addresses if you don't want to provide your own email address. Or, you know, I know some people, they put a fake birthday date on the email because they don't want this to leak, right? If the credentials ever get exposed. From the enterprise level perspective, I think it's kind of gets solved in the test environment, or you kind of like negotiate that with whoever your SaaS provider is. But yeah, definitely, you know, that's from the privacy perspective, especially personal privacy, that could be a way to see how you can protect yourself on the internet.
Well, hold on. We have a phone call that just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
Ah, that means we have the Department of Yes. And look, you see those lights going? That's as good as the light show gets here. Just want to point that out. All right, we got a poll. I saw probably the most voted I've ever seen a single bad idea in our polls ever. And I'm going to have to ask this question to you. I'll start with you, Ben. This one, this may be essentially debilitating to your business, but here is the bad idea, and I want to know your take on it. How at the Department of Yes you're going to handle this. Go back to on-prem. SaaS is a fad. Why are we going to do this?
Wow. Yeah, I think it makes total sense to go completely on-prem. In fact, I think what should be done is every employee is now a contractor, and they have to bring their own tools, and they have to own it inside their house or whatever, and bring it to work with them, just like a hammer or something like that, right? But it has to be on-prem, where they can prove they own everything, they control how it's operated, and then they use various methods to mail in the information.
So let me ask, would it be better if each individual has their own home server or their own server by their desk? So you have server, not just a workstation, but it's server per user?
Server per user, and they have to manage it, and you don't need IT.
Yes! There you go. Solve the IT problem. Elena, why are we going back to on-prem? This person thinks SaaS is a fad, as do the 24 people who voted for it.
It's a trick question, but I think it makes as much sense as for all of us to go back to paper and not use any digital tools.
Well, hold on. This is the Department of Yes. You want to go back to on-prem? Come on, Elena. Why are we doing this? Give me a good answer.
A good answer. If we all go to on-prem, then we no longer have to work remote. We have to go in person and work with each other on-prem.
Yeah, but then we'll all become sick during COVID. I'm sorry, Elena. I can't vote for you on that one.
Her heart is too much in SaaS.
I know, it's too much in SaaS. All right, we're gonna give you try to redeem yourself on the next one here. Yeah. Here, what's this next one? All right, here we go. I'm going to throw this one to you first, Elena. Believe apps. Now, again, this is why do you want to do this? Mm-hmm. Believe absolutely everything your SaaS provider tells you about security.
I think it's a good idea because SaaS providers, they are becoming transparent, and they are giving you all the information that they have. And I truly mean that. They do give you the information that they have about the controls that they have, and they want you to make the right decision. So they would be very transparent with you on what they have and what they don't have.
An honest answer. You redeemed yourself, Elena. All right, Ben. Why do you want to believe absolutely everything your SaaS provider tells you about security?
No more vendor risk reviews.
Oh, yes. I would agree with that. Yes, nobody wants to do that. In fact, does anybody enjoy that?
No.
Nobody enjoys it. All right, we're going to roll on over right now to one more thing. We have another game.
It's time to play What's Worse?
All right, the way this game is played is our winner from last week of the Best Bad Idea, who, by the way, I should mention, had a great bad idea. His bad idea, which was on hacking user access, he suggested that that users can pay a 99-cent fee to bypass the MFA authorization, which I thought was a great bad idea. Which, by the way, we had a great answer by our guest, too. So he's picked two of the bad ideas to do a face-off in this what's worse scenario here. So I'll start with you, Ben. I'm going to give you two bad scenarios again, and you have to tell me, risk management exercise, which one of these is worse and why. And the two are, one, host SaaS services on-premise so you don't have to worry about security. Two, put too many security controls on SaaS and limit the business. Which one is worse?
Oh, man. Well, you can't limit the business. So I would say that's worse.
You can't limit the business. I mean, that's the end all be all. You can't limit the business.
Yep.
But would the first one be too difficult to run the business if you had everything on premise?
The first one would be difficult to run the business, but if the second one is truly limiting the business because it's too locked down, then you're going to have to eat the pain of doing it yourself.
All right. I take this over to Elena. Which one of these two is worse? Host SaaS services on-premise so you don't have to worry about security, or put too many security controls on SaaS and limit the business?
I would say there's no such thing as too many security controls.
Okay. So you don't think even too many security controls are going to limit the business, that putting everything on-prem is worse? Is that your
think
answer?
you can find a balance, yeah.
You can find. All right. We have a split decision on that. Good answers, both of you. Excellent. All right. We're back into our questions. Please vote question. We have 4 questions in there. Please vote which ones you like the best, and we will go to those as quickly as possible. This comes from Roland Garfine. I hope one of those is correct, I'm going to guess. For SaaS application developers, what is the biggest security concern? Do you know of any data around how actual discovered vulnerabilities are distributed? Who wants to field this one first? Ben, do you have this?
I'd love to hear Elena's.
Elena, do you have a take on this?
No, I think, a lot of the cloud providers and SaaS providers, and also, industries such as banking and financial services, they do share remediated vulnerabilities. So once they do close them, it is part of the best practice exchange.
Let me. I'm going to jump to actually Andy Bennett's question. Like, this seems far more tailored to our discussion right here, and I, in fact, heck, I wish I asked this question first, Andy. So thank you for sending it in. Moving to SaaS is essentially a risk decision, kind of like the What's Worse game we were just playing. And in fact, it was do you go on premise or you stay with SaaS? He goes on to say, moving to SaaS is essentially a risk decision where we are agreeing to offload part of the responsibility for the platform and accepting the risk that comes with the lack of control for some benefit, whatever the product is. And we know all the benefits that come around SaaS. So I'm going to start with you, Elaine, on this. What are the first 3 or 5, he's saying, and I think we can stay to 2 or 3 here, but first 3 or 5 key factors that we should consider when evaluating the risk, I'm assuming of a SaaS provider, and what is everyone's strategy for communicating the risk to the business and executive leadership? So this is a pretty basic question. Let's just start. Like, the first, you're meeting with the SaaS provider. What are the first 2 or 3 questions we're asking? Yeah. And I know there's a longer questionnaire that's involved, but let's start high level here.
Sure. I think, you kind of like have to explain, first of all, what you have to start with the why. What is the purpose of you going into a SaaS environment? And then that will also help the provider to find a good answer, a good application for you and a good model. But then, of course, looking at all of the things that really matter to you, whether you want, say, more customized support, can that provider give it to you or not? What are the SLA times? What are the kind of like, collaboration model that you want to explore with your SaaS provider? So I think all of those questions really will feed into answering your why and making sure that you have the answers and can understand whether migrating your applications into that environment is a good decision for you, and that will really simplify your environment.
Have you heard, actually, a question for both of you, have you heard anything from a SaaS provider that made you go, oh my God, hell no, we're walking away from this one. This is a beehive of problems. Like, what was the thing that was said that you said, this is just going to explode in our face? Either of you want to jump on that?
Well, I'm not sure it's to the level that you're you're implying, but
I always like to find the extreme.
one, one time, uh, one time we didn't ask a SaaS provider about MFA because to us it's
It seems
table
assumed.
stakes. Yeah.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we don't have MFA. We don't offer MFA. And they're like, what do you do? And, so, but, I think there's still the disconnect on some of those features. I think to some of the things Elena said too, like, where's my data going to live? Where's it going to get routed? We see data in our customer environments that are using SaaS that, all of a sudden the US person does some query or something and that gets run in foreign data centers and things like that. So lots of surprises there to teams. And then how collaborative will they be with you if you need them to delete data or something like that? And then finally, like monitoring and security, like how much can you operationalize security around their tooling? Because, some are really great at that and have capabilities and APIs and things like that. And others haven't really considered even logging what's being done in the SaaS app.
Yeah, and I would agree with Ben. I don't think it goes to that extreme level. I think the capabilities at this stage are pretty known. So if you go back maybe 5 to 6 years ago when the model, especially, when the companies were just starting to serve critical infrastructure industries, there were a lot of questions that still needed to be clarified. But at this stage, I think it's really a collaboration model where you even co-develop the environments and customize them for a particular industry or a particular customer and client.
All right, I just want to tip of the hat to the chat room, which is always coming up with new, essentially inside jokes. This week's inside joke is all about Hamster as a Service, and you guys, I think, I would suggest somebody essentially filing a business patent on this because you seem to be all over it, and this adds to the other running gags of having a tattoo of my face on your body, which I strongly recommend against. To Spark Coin, and also the Scent of Dutch, which, by the way, there was a bad idea last week that had to do with the game of Operation. And I didn't say Scent of Dutch, but it was obviously Dutch's bad idea that I checked, and it was Dutch's bad idea. So, Dutch, you tip your hand all the time. Although I don't believe he's on this video chat today. Yes, I don't think he is. All right, we have a question that has come in that's got more votes than any question I've seen come in. So we've got the most votes for a bad idea, the most votes for a question, and here we go. And this seems right up your alley, Ben. Comes from JD. How do you create meaningful detections in SaaS environments that don't have endpoints or network data?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is when someone else is running the service, aka SaaS, how do you do detection against it, right? And sometimes they have built-in capabilities where you can go into the system and tune something. Other times it's all about getting data out and putting it into your system where you do have more opportunity to create rules and that kind of thing. So I think first and foremost, it comes back to the visibility question and having access to behavioral data, maybe profile and privilege data, that kind of thing. And then what are you concerned about? Massive downloads, foreign logins, third-party risk, API tokens getting created, new users, etc. Right? So we could go on, and I'm happy to talk all day or offline with people about this. But I think first and foremost, you have to have some data to then apply detection rules against.
Let me throw this question comes from Kevin Hackinson. Again, last week's best bad idea winner. How do you balance a fully customized customer service experience from a SaaS vendor with data privacy protections of your corporate secrets hosted with them? Okay, so they're providing customer service. You've got your data in there. There are privacy issues. What isn't revealed? So customer service can happen. Does this get into discussions that you have, Elena, around policy? Yes?
Yeah, I would say, again, it comes down to the question of customization and configuration. So you have to either, depending on the types of modules that you have, it can either be available to you as a customer, or this is something you can talk to your SaaS provider. And I think, again, the industry is really moving to providing greater opportunities for customers to customize their own privacy requirements and data residency and all of that.
Okay. Good point. let's go back to our questions. And we just should let everyone know we have 17 minutes left. At 17 minutes, we're going to be going into our icebreaker. Please, if you haven't stuck around, we got a huge crowd that's joined us today. So thank you very much for joining us. If it is your first time being here with us and you've never been part of our icebreaker, it is a lot of fun. What happens is we all get thrown into a pool and we all randomly get matched up in a series of 5-minute one-on-one meetings. And we do this 5 times. So 5 meetings in a half hour. Kind of a fun way to get a serendipitous moment with just a random cybersecurity professional. It's kind of fun. Something we missed from going to trade shows and conferences, which we will get back soon. Well, this seems like it happens all the time, but it's voted up. Although SaaS is secured, and to the level we don't know, how is data theft happening? What is a preventative measure? And this is Rakesh Elamaran. So I think I just want to know what are some just basic preventative measures? I'm going to just summarize it. What are just some basic preventative measures we can all take around SaaS environments that maybe some are not doing? Ben.
Everything should have a half-life. And so what I mean by that is
good point.
We give someone access and then they have access forever until you take it away or they leave or whatever. You share a file with somebody and they have access to that forever until you take it away or whatever. You share a file publicly in G Suite or whatever, and unless you remember, it's always out there, right? So I think first and foremost, it's half-life. It's thinking of everything needs to only be shared, collaborated on, or kind of accessible, available for the shortest amount of time. Now that's hard, but if you take that mentality, I think that gets you a long way.
Smart. You wanted to add something to that, Elena?
Yeah, I guess, obviously that's a really good point that Ben just raised. But of course, all of the traditional controls around the encryption and making sure that the data is removed on time, and if say like people who have access to your data are changing roles or moving, that's also the controls are changing with those changes in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely I agree with the half-life point.
That's a really good point. I like that. This question comes in from Mani Kirthi. And by the way, we only have a little bit of time. If anyone wants to join us on camera to make a comment or ask a question, please just type in, bring me on. Please do that. So Mani Kirthi, again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asks, can Zero Trust model address our SaaS issues with regards to identity management? So as the access policy is unified across your resources, SaaS, PaaS, and I'll also, let me add to that, to what level can identity management be carried through an SSO? Ben, what's your take on that?
Yeah, and actually, I know Elena's a fan of Zero Trust. I mean, I think we all are. Mm-hmm. Just the notion of it's rather than default trust, it's sort of default skepticism, right? Might be a better way to put it. I think you can get there with SaaS through SSO and some other integration work, but often the actual privilege levels and what you have access to inside these platforms is still kind of withheld inside each SaaS provider, right? So it's not like you're passing around all the exact groups and tokens and everything else you should have. It's basically like, are you allowed to sign in or not? But once you're in, it's kind of still left in that SaaS app. So I think there's still a long way to go for, to the earlier point, standards or some sort of way of kind of stitching together all this in order to apply more of a consistent, like, this is this person, this is what they should have access to, and let's monitor their behavior.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a great concept. It's a great way to bring all the applications, the controls, and the environment together. Like Ben said, it's probably a little bit ways away in terms of implementation across the enterprises. But in terms of the concept, I am definitely a fan.
All right, good question here comes in from Chris, and honestly, I don't know the answer to this thing. So I mean, I don't know the answer to a lot of these questions. That's why I'm asking you. But this one really sort of, I think this is a tough one. Given the variety of SaaS applications and connections between them, how can I correlate potentially malicious activity across the different services? Example, if Active Directory is compromised, how can I measure the blast radius in Box and Slack? Can that be done, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but there's definitely progress there. I'll say that we've done some cool things, so would love to talk. But
Please feel free to say.
well, it's, a lot of it is stitching together of different environments, right? So you have to tie the identity together. Like Ben is a person, and then here's his accounts, here's his privileges, and then here's everything he did. So if you can start to pull that together, and then you see any part of compromise or suspicious activity in any part of that overall identity, you at least understand the full scope that that person, myself in this case, has access to, right? So I think it really comes down to ahead of time putting together the integration work, or doing the integration work to combine identity, privilege and behavioral information so that you can more quickly assess the scope.
Yeah, and I think exactly like Ben said, this is where the industry is moving to, right? To tie the identity with the behavior, to set the profile of what normal looks like, and then see if there's any deviation from that normal to block that. And David, my laptop is about to die. I'll be back in a second. I'll take my charge.
Okay, all right. Well, come back. We'll wrap up in 5 minutes. All right.
I have a question for you.
Yes, what's your question?
What's
for
this
me?
Spark coin everyone's talking about?
This is something, I can't keep track of everything that goes. Sparkcoin is some type of cryptocurrency that they've developed that I don't seem to have, I guess, any access to or funding in whatsoever. But this is just one running gag that goes into the chat room that I unwittingly become a participant in, like people wanting to put tattoos of my face on their body, which the idea, again, horrifies me that anyone would even think of doing something like that. I will tell you that I saw a friend of mine actually got a tattoo of Jerry Lewis on his arm, and went to go see Jerry Lewis speak once, and had Jerry Lewis sign his tattoo with a Sharpie. Then he ran to a tattoo artist and had him tattoo in the actual signature. So the Jerry Lewis tattoo, essentially cartoon on his face, if it's kind of the classic Jerry Lewis cartoon, and his actual signature was burned into his arm. So I can't say I like Jerry Lewis that much. And I hope nobody likes me that much either, for that matter. All right, we have just a few more minutes until we're going to do the wrap up here. With a few minutes left, if you have not registered for the video chat for next week, our last one of the year, click the button below. Again, it will not get you out of this video chat at all. It'll just take you to the registration page. You can register while you're still in here. All right. We got one more question here. This comes from Jacob Kaluzny, who, by the way, creates some great videos himself, offering some great security tips. And he asks, policies, questionnaires, or actual verification, configuration review, or pen test performed by a trusted third party of your choice. Who's going to handle this, I guess, is his question. Ben?
Is the answer you probably have to do all of the above?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you need to assess the risk going into something, right? Like whether it's onboarding a new SaaS provider or what have you. Then you do need to understand how your team is using it. And I think one thing that's resonated with me in talking to customers and organizations is, can you get review tasks to become alert tasks? Right. So if you get to a state that is acceptable, and then just alert on change to that situation, change to that state, you don't have to go do this massive review every month or every quarter or whatever. You still might have obligations to do other reviews, but get from review to alert state to alert situation, I think is a goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would
you want to add to that, Elena?
Yeah, I would add to that, to what Ben said, David. I think from the provider perspective, what the industry tries to do is to also let customers self-service on a lot of that information. So, like all that information is definitely critical for them. So I know in our company, we have a trust center where customers can log in and download a lot of those reports without actually having to talk to anyone. It's just available for them as a customer. And I know, other providers are doing the same. So definitely self-servicing and making that information available in the easiest possible way is also our goal.
Okay, that's a really good point. I want to dig into that a little bit more, because we have heard and take the Facebook example. For years, Mark Zuckerberg says, well, you can just go and you can change the policies. But so many people, to manage your own identity, manage your own privacy, things like that. But we know so few people do it, mostly because of the complication of it. So maybe you can give me one example of this was complicated before, but we did this to simplify it, and we noticed, this much more uptake. Like, do you have an example like that, Elena?
I think from your example, David, maybe we would have to distinguish between kind of like consumer applications versus what's happened on the enterprise side. I think
I use that as a consumer thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can take it to the enterprise level. I was just using that as an example. Go ahead.
Sure. No, I think you're right that if you look back, 5 years ago or years ago, a lot of those requests were delivered in a manual way. You would have to actually talk to someone, or you would have to make a call, send an email. Now, a lot of it is actually available, and more information becomes available through such means. And then, of course, personal touch never gets old, right? So sometimes, it's definitely worth it to still maintain those personal connections. But in terms of the scalability and the ease of use and deployment for both the consumption side and the delivery side, I think this is where we're going as an industry.
Simplification, Ben, anything specifically in terms of simplifying the trust issue on the enterprise side so it doesn't become so complicated, so it can be more self-service, as Elena mentioned?
Yeah, I think just in general, going in that motion and having that strategy of trying to enable the employees to have a little bit more say in their access, right? And then combining that with the half-life concept, right? So things kind of go away unless they explicitly say they need it. Mm-hmm. The challenge with getting rid of stuff, and I'm sure everyone on this knows better than me, it's hard to get rid of stuff if it's not easy to add it. Like if people think it's a 6-month process to get that account back, they're going to fight tooth and nail or whatever to keep it. But if they know it's just an easy way to get it back, they'll give it up easily. So you have to look at the whole life cycle, I think.
Good point. All right. A couple of things I want to do to wrap up our discussion. I want the two of you to get ready for your 1-minute summary of advice. I want to thank our sponsor here, Obsidian. That is Ben's company, Ben Johnson's company, for sponsoring this very episode. If you have concerns on this very topic about SaaS security, please talk to them. They'll have actually a few of them will be joining us in our one-on-one meetup as well. Also, stick around for the icebreaker. In fact, Andrew, you can change that link at the bottom right now to be our icebreaker link. You can click on that anytime, even as we're wrapping up with our last 3 minutes right now. Click on it, just have that open, and then we'll all, essentially, when this shuts down, we'll all roll over to that, and we'll begin our icebreaker. And then last, if you're interested in sponsoring a video chat, yes, we got plenty of them open for 2021. They're a lot of fun, as if you hadn't seen already. So please join us for that as well. All right. I'm going to take this to you first. Elena, I will ask you. 1-minute summary. What is your advice to everybody else on the subject of hacking SaaS security? And I would just take it from the opportunities, like the way we started this. So let's bookend it. What are the bookends? And let's try to avoid making these mistakes. What's your suggestion?
No, absolutely, David. We know that 80% of the businesses already use some form of a public cloud or SaaS application. So that's definitely a big number. And all the data that we have shows that it's set to grow. So when you think about your own strategy or whether this is something fit for your business or department, I would say you should look at a few aspects. So first of all, know what systems you already have in place, know how they're configured and what can actually be done to complement them. And so ask those questions to your security teams, ask those questions to your operational teams to make those decisions. The second question that I think also came up in the chat today is what risks are we actually exposed to? What kind of information are you putting in the cloud? Do you know what happens? Do you know how your controls are configured? Do you know what opportunities and controls your provider has? And so basically know what risks you're exposed to so you can develop that strategy. Then the third question that we actually spent so much time discussing today is how can I make my SaaS management easy and more accessible to my team without actually compromising security and enabling my business. And if your team relies extensively on those applications, how does it help them to do their job? What are the obstacles that they're facing? And just maybe discuss among your team, but also with your providers, how can you make it better? And then at last but not least, I think what we should continuously ask ourselves is, at what stage do I integrate security? At what stage do I collaborate with my vendors, providers? At what stage do I reach out, or at what stage do I only solve problems internally within my team? And so I think the demand for security technology is on the rise, and definitely as a technology and security team, we also always have to consider at what stage of product development we integrate security and how we collaborate better across the organization. So kind of like asking yourself and your team, what is my role in cybersecurity? I will definitely help you craft that vision.
All right, Ben, I'm giving you 30 seconds. Give me a wrap up, quick.
Make SaaS security a first-class part of your security strategy. Educate the business. They have a big part to play. They might own the SaaS app, so they have to be your security ambassador. And then you get to monitor. Whatever you can monitor, because that's what you do. And whether it's your team or your MSSP or whatever, you need to have continuous monitoring.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Let me remind you, everybody, we were speaking with Elena Kovachko, who is the Chief Trust Officer over at SAP. Again, all her own personal opinion. Don't be selling stock based on anything she said here. Ben Johnson, also co-founder and CTO for Obsidian. And thank you hugely, Obsidian, for sponsoring this. Thank you, everyone in the chat room. Make sure you click that link now to join us over there. And Andrew, thank you for producing this. Take us out.